This is the H.D. Ingles. If I said that right, let me try again. H.D. Ingles. And I want to present to you another episode of Fascinating Facts. It's been a roll on this broadcast, of course, on the RU Nuts Network. This episode is about American President Grover Cleveland, a man who does not have the recognition he deserves. His integrity is unmatchable. In other words, this episode is about integrity and telling the truth. This video is taken from our book, A Stroll Through American History. The video is a bit longer than my typical video teleprompter, but it may be worth your while. Here we go. Grover Cleveland, 1837 to 1908. Start with Sheriff Grover Cleveland. Grover Cleveland was elected Erie County, New York Sheriff in 1870. Sheriff Cleveland hanged 3 criminals while serving in that position. A deputy said that he would perform the hangings for the usual $10 fee, that's per head, but Cleveland declined. Cleveland believed that the sheriff should handle the punishment himself. It also should be noted that Cleveland did not relish the task of hanging a man. Neither did he like to waste public money. And at that time, $10 was a bit of money. Now let's go to Mayor Grover Cleveland. Cleveland ran for mayor of Buffalo, New York in 1881 as a reformer of a corrupt city government. He won the election and took office in 1882. Cleveland's handling of public funds was admirable, and his reputation, because he did not approve of machine politics, was enhanced to the point he was asked to run as the Democrat candidate for governor of New York. So, Governor Grover Cleveland. Cleveland became governor of New York in January 1883. Governor Cleveland opposed unnecessary government spending and vetoed 8 bills in the first 2 months of office. Cleveland became very popular with the voters, but it became very unpopular with the powerful Tammany Hall Democrat political machine in New York City, which was quite corrupt. But Cleveland, a Democrat, won the respect of New York State Assemblyman Theodore Roosevelt and other reform-minded Republicans. Cleveland was soon regarded as presidential material. For the big one. President Grover Cleveland, election of 1884. Even with the opposition from Tammany Hall, Grover Cleveland became the 1884 Democrat nominee for president. Now, his past catches up with him. In his earlier days, while unmarried, Cleveland had spent time with a woman who was a known prostitute. The woman had a child born in 1874. Now, it was an ugly campaign. In 1884, at the time of the election, 10 years after the child was born, the woman claimed that candidate Cleveland was the father. It is unknown who the father of the child really was, but Cleveland said he could have been the father and accepted responsibility. He knew nothing about the child before this. And now this out of nowhere situation caused great distress in his campaign, and Cleveland was asked how to handle the matter. Cleveland's response was classic Cleveland. He said, "Tell the truth." think it's rather interesting that the woman waited 10 years before saying anything and in the year of an election. Think about that. And imagine that. A presidential candidate saying, tell the truth. If you haven't guessed, Grover Cleveland is one of my favorite presidents. Now, along comes James G. Blaine, Cleveland's Republican opponent, Senator James G. Blaine of Maine. Because of the earlier prostitute situation, Cleveland's private life was looked at negatively, but his public record was impeccable. James G. Blaine, on the other hand, had the perfect private life, but he had a public record of financial scandal. To quote one of Blaine's foes, we are told that Mr. Blaine has been delinquent in office, but blameless in private life, while Mr. Cleveland has been a model of official integrity, but culpable in his personal relations. We should therefore elect Mr. Cleveland to the public office, which he is so well qualified to fill, and remand Mr. Blaine to the private station he is so admirably fitted to adorn. Blaine lost. In 1884, Grover Cleveland was elected as 22nd President of the United States. President Cleveland was the first Democrat president since President James Buchanan, 1857-1861. That's prior to the war between the states. Okay, President Grover Cleveland, first term. Although President Cleveland is not a widely known name today, in my opinion, the man did some great things. President Cleveland believed it was his job to execute laws and administer the business of the executive. He did not interfere with Congress unless they presented him with problems. President Cleveland unearthed a bunch of abuses and corrected. President Cleveland recovered thousands of acres from railroads which held exaggerated land holdings and opened the lands to homesteaders. President Cleveland reversed a decision of the previous president, Chester A. Arthur, to open almost 500,000 acres of Indian land to settlers and speculators. President Cleveland returned the land to the Indian reservation. President Cleveland vetoed a bill allowing Civil War veterans to be paid for any disability, including old age. President Cleveland assured that his appointees to the new Interstate Commerce Commission would be fair-minded, effective men. Now, the election of 1888. Before the election, Cleveland said to a friend, "What is the use of being elected or re-elected unless you stand for something?" Cleveland won the popular vote with a plurality of 100,000, but Tammany Hall and Republicans took New York from him. Benjamin Harrison won the electoral vote 223 to 168. The election of 1892. In the election of 1892, Cleveland beat President Harrison by almost 400,000 popular votes and won 227 electoral votes to Harrison's 145. Pretty much overwhelming. Note that in 1890, the U.S. Census showed a population of almost 63 million. Now, President Grover Cleveland, second term. President Cleveland walked into office while there was a financial depression and financial panic. In 1893, banks failed and mortgages were foreclosed. 2 to 3 million American workers were unemployed. Remember, the population was only 63 million. Now, as an aside, the Sherman Silver Purchase Act was a United States federal law enacted on July 14, 1890, which required the Secretary of the Treasury to purchase each month 4.5 million ounces of silver at the market price. The law was adopted in response to pressure from mine owners who were alarmed by the falling price of silver, and from Western farmers who were favorable to inflationary measures to increase prices of their products. President Cleveland steps in. Cleveland was a strong believer in Gresham's law. Bad money drives out good. Because of his belief, Cleveland called on Congress to repeal the Sherman Silver Act to restore confidence in the American dollar. President Cleveland insisted on maintaining the gold standard. On October 30th, 1893, the Sherman Silver Purchase Act was repealed. The U.S. Treasury had been losing gold because of the silver purchases at a very staggering rate. Financial giant J.P. Morgan offered to raise $50 million in gold, but Cleveland could not accept his terms. Cleveland finally gave in to Morgan, which indicated how dire the situation was. This caused fear of the power being assumed by J.P. Morgan. President Cleveland saved the gold standard, but lost the Democrat Party to populists. Now, changing the way we count presidents. President Cleveland is responsible for making President Donald Trump the 45th president, but only the 44th man to serve as president. The reason is very simple. Cleveland was, at the time, the only president to have won an election, lost the next election, and then won again. Presidents are numbered by administrations. Grover Cleveland was the only man to have served 2 non-consecutive terms as president. Ergo, 2 different administrations, which made Cleveland both the 22nd president and the 24th president. Marriage. President Cleveland was the 2nd president to wed while in office, and the only president to marry in the White House. On June 2nd, 1886, Grover Cleveland, age 49, when he married Frances Folsom, age 21, in the Blue Room at the White House. President Cleveland's wife was a beautiful young woman, but Cleveland had a political foe who said, "I detest him so much that I don't even think his wife is beautiful." But even among his political foes, this man seems to have been the only one who denied that Cleveland's young wife was very beautiful. Now, at least to me, Grover Cleveland's most enduring words: tell the truth. Well, that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of a fact, and thank you for watching.